You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. Today is August 12th, 2024, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine Monday?
Spencer, hello. Happy Monday to you. You just said it's August 12th, which means we are 10 days away from early access for War Within.
Yes.
So that's pretty exciting. But I'm doing well. I'm back. I'm back home. Had a little vacay last week. Spent a lot of time relaxing and just kind of hanging out. A little bit of a lighter WoW week as a result. But you know what? We're so close to the finish line here that I don't even really care about doing anything in Dragonflight at this point. Like if we do it as a group, cool, that's fun. I'm into it. And if not, I'm not gonna be remotely upset about having a little bit of a break before we start ramping all the way up for expansion stuff.
Yeah, so I suppose that means you probably weren't raiding very much or whatnot last week.
No raids this past week. I don't think the team even ran without me even one night just for like a heroic clear. So, you know, we'll see what happens this week. I know we're going to raid at least one more time because we got to do all the all Demon Hunters and Evokers raid for, you know, the night before early access goes out. But, you know, if we don't end up doing anything this week coming up, I mean, it's weird. Like Dragonflight's been a great expansion, but I think this is like the lamest of lame duck, you know, endings of an expansion ever, because I think for a variety of reasons, right? Everything, the release cadence was so fast throughout the whole expansion. The gap between Dragonflight and War Within release is very small. We had stuff like Plunderstorm and Remix. I mean, Remix is still going on for another week, you know, that is also like these avenues of different ways to play the game, or like even pre-expansion prep, right? If that's the way that you want to go with a character. And yeah, so I feel like also with the season 4 model, we have like, you know, this, I don't know, 3-month, 4-month long season basically. And it's like, you're super powered and everything, you know, you get to the end of the kind of power curve there pretty quick. And it's just like, all right, we're ready to go. I mean, there've been times earlier in the game's history where it was like, we were still going pretty seriously. It was like, yeah, I don't know. This is the thing that we have to do in WoW. So like, it's very important that we do this together because otherwise there's nothing that we're doing. It is not like that this time.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. You did your have you done your was it all monk raid? Is that what you're doing this go around?
No, we're doing all Demon Hunters, all Evokers this time.
That's
I got overridden. It should have been I think it was Druid's turn. I think we did Paladin at the end of Shadowlands.
Yeah.
So I think it was Paladin's turn, and I said, okay, so we're going to do all Paladin. They said, no, we want to do Demon Hunters and Evokers. We'll do all Flappy Boys.
Druid's always the better one.
All right, if that's what we all want to do, but you know, I'm fine. The whole point is to have fun. So if people think this is going to be fun, then that's what we're going to do, and we'll do Druid next time probably. The thing with all Druid raid is it's too smooth.
I know,
because you have all 4 jobs covered, and like everybody kind of has some Druid spec they can play. Monk one is the funniest because almost nobody knows how to play any Monk specs. So,
well, it's not just that; it's also
and you don't
there's
have any range DPS.
There's just no range.
But yeah, which usually doesn't matter. By I mean, we do normal mode, and it's like usually a couple people be geared up or whatever. But yeah, so I'm a little upset about the bucking tradition and not having just one class, but I think it's a decent compromise. It'll be fun. I got my Demon Hunters all ready to go, so I'm I'm definitely ready to step in there with her for next week, and I have this whole week. I guess I'll go get some bullion and just top up a couple pieces or whatever. But
sure,
I don't know. We'll see. I don't at the moment. I don't have signups for tomorrow, which is kind of weird. But we'll see if we get there. Maybe we'll do some stuff. But
it is a good time to be taking a break. It is the ideal time if you're someone who's like, hey, I just want to level some characters. You can do the pre-expansion event. That's great. But as far as rating and whatnot goes, it's a good time to just like chill for a week and then,
yeah, I mean, it's still summertime. Yeah. It's like, I'm definitely willing to lead runs if we have interest, but I'm also not going to pound the drum for people to show up, you know?
Yeah.
I did bring my laptop on vacation with me because we're just kind of chilling. We're at a lake house and just no real agenda. So, I mean, what else am I going to do? I'm not out there, you know, jet skiing or whatever. Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So, it was actually a really good opportunity to do the pre-expansion event stuff, the Radiant Echoes. We talked about the changes last week.
Yeah.
And they're so good. I feel like the whole structure of the event is great now, and it's so lucrative. Since the last time we spoke on the show, like I got my Dark Iron Warrior to 70, my Blood Elf Paladin Volpira Rogue, my Horde Pandaren Hunter, my Blood Elf Mage, my Goblin Shaman, and my Zandalari Troll Priest, all 70. Wow. I'm almost done with the Orc Warlock, which is the last Horde tune I have. I don't have a Horde Evoker, so I got to figure out if I'm going to make one of those or not. I kind of want to wait and see if we get other classes Drakthir can be, and then make a Horde Drakthir of some different class.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it's seamless. You just go do stuff. You do the daily quest, and that alone is like 8 levels at a shot just for participating in that, you know? I have like 5 more allied races that are around level 50 that I want to cap out, just because it feels weird to have them stuck there at 50 when the leveling is so smooth, and I want to do the dailies anyway to get the currency to buy the mogs and all that. So why not?
Yeah.
And then it'll be like, okay, what tunes do I want to kit out to, you know, in the 483 gear or the 480 gear, and, you know, maybe get some 493s from the weeklies or whatever, try to get them ready to go. So that's been really fun. I think the structure, that's great. And, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of time on it if you don't want to, but if you grind it, you can get a ton of reward for it. You get the crests and you get all that stuff. So been really enjoying that, actually. So with the changes they made, now having like a week or so to have done it a bunch, like I think it's in great shape and perfect for getting people ready for War Within.
Yeah. Now, when you went on vacation, you also said you brought a book with you that you wanted to read during that.
Yeah. I wanted to mention this top of show because I think a lot of our audience would be interested in it. I was Jason Schreier and his publisher were kind enough to send me a review copy of his upcoming book, Play Nice. It comes out, I think, October 8th, I want to say. And it's the history of Blizzard Entertainment, and including like the very recent history and right up until basically the present. It's the founding of the company by Mike Morhaime and Alan Adham up through the layoffs that happened for Microsoft earlier this year. And it's a very bumpy ride. It's a fascinating read. It's got a lot of interviews with mostly past Blizzard employees. There are some interviews with some current employees, I think, but it adds so much context to the events of the last few years around the company. I think it paints certain things in a different light. The reporting is very even-handed, and I mean there's so much, you know, primary source material with the interviews that he got and everything. So it's really a fascinating story. Blizzard's company history is so unique in this industry. And, you know, the twists and turns just keep happening. So thank you to him and to his publisher for hooking me up with a copy a little bit early. It was a book I wanted to buy and read anyway, and not having to wait until October when it would be a lot less convenient for me to read the book in a short period of time was great. And kind of weird vacation reading maybe, but it was perfect for me. So I highly recommend that. It's called Play Nice. And if you're interested in sort of how Blizzard started, how it got to where it got, and what happened once it got there, I mean, it's so comprehensive, and, you know, it makes things like it gave me a bit of a different perspective on the relationship with Activision Blizzard and that whole situation. It gave me some different perspective on the lawsuit stuff, even, you know, going back to 21, obviously. I mean, I think that's still fresh in everybody's minds. And, you know, the way he kind of lays it out and the people that he spoke with, it was a very complicated issue. And I think there were some elements of media sensationalizing that happened with certain elements of the story, which he goes into in great detail. And again, primary sources with people involved in it. So, it's really a fascinating read. I couldn't really put it down. I think I read like most of it in one sitting. So yeah, check it out if that is of interest to you. If you're interested in the business of making these games, it was really cool. So check it out definitely for sure. And thank you for sending me one.
Awesome. Well, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Arena Skirmish bonus event, meaning that the honor gains from skirmishes are increased by 50%, and there's a quest to win 10 of them, which gets some conquest and honor. I don't really necessarily know how lucrative and beneficial this is at this stage of the whole thing. So, it's something to be aware of, but I don't necessarily think it's something that people should be hopping into and trying to accomplish something unless you're buying transmog, I guess, at this point. The last hurrah for this week, obviously, you're doing whatever one you choose, hopefully, as opposed to it just being randomly assigned to you. It's still kind of,
We hope we're still hoping.
Still wonder if they're going to fix it at some point where you can pick which one.
We got 2 weeks left for this to potentially work in any way where it might matter at all ever. And yeah, it still hasn't worked for me anyway. I get Zaralik Cavern every time.
Yep.
Which is okay because it's the one I would probably pick, but it is weird. Like sometimes the UI glitches and it's like there's a box that looks like you could pick what you want to do and then it kind of flickers and it just assigns you Zaralik Cavern usually. So we'll see. We got patch maintenance in NA tomorrow. So, once we can actually get in and see, then maybe this will work. Although it's a lot less exciting considering that the tiny window where you're going to be able to choose, it wasn't working right.
Yeah. At this stage, it's like, I'd rather you dedicate your time to fixing something else. This is going away soon enough. It's fine. We also have Gravity Lapse happening as the PvP Brawl. That's Eye of the Storm, where gravity turns off once a minute. So if you want to mix it up with some anti-gravity fun inside of Eye of the Storm, be sure you check out the Gravity Lapse Brawl this week. And if you win one, you get some Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor. Again, if you're looking to purchase Transmog, good way to do that. Of course, the world bosses are up and they are awakened, and you can get nice $4.99 eye-level loot off of world bosses. So if you want to knock them out, feel free. And the Mythic Plus affixes for the week. Oh, actually, I'll let you know that it's Liskanoth, the Future Bane, the Ice Proto-Dragon in Thaldraszus that's up this week. The Mythic Plus affixes for the week are Tyrannical, Afflicted, and Bolstering, meaning bosses have more health and deal increased damage. While in combat, afflicted souls periodically appear and seek the aid of players, and when any non-boss enemy dies, its death cry empowers allies, temporarily increasing their damage by 20%, and this effect stacks. This is an ugly tyrannical week. I gotta say, you're dealing with tyrannical bosses with afflicted happening, which is all well in combat, which means that it'll be happening all through the fight. So just FYI, you're dealing with tyrannical boss fights that are longer boss fights, that are harder boss fights while dealing with afflicted. Trash is also something you have to deal with afflicted during, and it bolsters, which means that the big pulls that you're doing, you have to be careful about how frequently something's dying and how often something's dying. In this case, with bolstering, you tend to want to get everything low and then kill it all at once so that you don't have one build-a-boss happening where one mob's going to be doing a ton of damage. Now, bolstering does wear off over time, so there is the chance of like kiting stuff around. But remember, if you're kiting stuff around, you're still locked in combat, which means afflicted is still showing up. So FYI, you still have to deal with that too. So yeah, this is like not the worst tyrannical week, but it's up there as a bad tyrannical week, I would say.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think there's elements that also make it feel worse than it is, which is that we are less than 2 full weeks out from this being really of concern to a lot of players. I mean, not everybody's going to be in early access, but a lot of people are going to be in early access. So, we're just in a super, sunset period here for all of this stuff. And this is an annoying combo, and it's not really how you want to go out. I think, I don't know if I'm going to do any Keystones this week. We'll see. There's really just no point in doing them anyway. For my main, it's not like I really need any other gear or anything to get ready for expansion. And Afflicted just stinks. It's one of the worst affixes in my opinion, as we've said many times since they introduced it in season 2. Like, it's very comp dependent. You have to have, there are classes that cannot do anything about afflicted mobs, and you need to make sure that you don't have too many of those classes in your group because you need to deal with them. Bolstering on non-fort isn't that bad, but it is, it's annoying. It's annoying for sure because you have what's supposed to be easy trash that then can become dangerous, certainly. So that is, it's a concern. And yeah, Afflicted happens constantly, even when you're fighting the tyrannical bosses. You're going to be fighting for 30% longer, give or take,
Yeah.
That's just more attention being pulled away from what you're doing on the bosses that are already harder. And it's, eating healer mana and dispel CDs and everything like that. So this is like not really one of the combos you want to see when you're this close to the finish line, right? Like I can't even, I guess like if you're still really pushing hard because you haven't quite knocked out Keystone Master or Keystone Hero yet, then you get what you get at this point, right? We're down to the last 2 weeks. So you got to just, bite the bullet and get in there. But it's not like a fun combo to play. It's not an easy combo to play compared to some of the stuff we see. And, the motivation to do it is just rapidly evaporating. So I don't know. It's like early season or mid-season, I would say, like, this isn't a great week. And then you put all that stuff together with this combo, and it's like, I don't know, probably just maybe level up a different character in Radiant Echoes or something. Go buy yourself some transmog.
Yeah, exactly. You could certainly choose to spend the time now however you want to spend the time now, I guess. Micro Holidays, the free t-shirt day is going on August 16th, so that's a few days away. That's this coming Friday. And basically there's going to be vendors inside of Stormwind, as well as, actually it might be all of the capital. Yeah, it is all of the capital cities, I think, is where they actually take place now, where they sort of circulate around and, fire off free t-shirts, and you can collect them all from that vendor. Or you can head out to like Lower City in Shatrath, Stormheim, Grizzly Hills, Valley of Four Winds, Zangara, Eastern Kingdom, and Winterspring. Sorry, Eastern Plaguelands and Winterspring, where you can actually gather some more shirts there from specific vendors as well. Obviously, there'll be like a Wowhead guide as to the exact pinpoint as to where they all specifically are. But yeah, if you're looking to get in like the Threads of Tyrion, you can find Melvin Shirtsun, which is quite the name. It's perfect, right? In Eastern Plaguelands at Lights Hope Chapel.
It's like, this is one of the silliest in-game events, I think. Yeah, and you can go see Shirtsy Cloth Patch in Winterspring.
Yeah.
This is fun. This is one of those deals where if you've done this and gotten all the shirts, then you're done forever. They haven't added a new shirt to this that I'm aware of in this whole time. But if you've never done it, like, you could totally go do this on Friday. You got to remember it's only one day.
Yeah.
Now each of the vendors that are afield, that are not in the, like the racial capital cities, they have like unique shirts that you can only get from them.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. If you want to just fill out that UI, get your collection, like, you got to go see them. The entertainers kind of walk around in a circle somewhere in the city, and they just randomly throw out shirts at different intervals.
Mm-hmm.
And you can click them and collect them, and they will, if you hang out there long enough, you'll eventually get all the ones that they throw around. So that might be a little bit time consuming, and it can be a little frustrating, because you're like, oh, I already got that one, but I still need this other one. But once you get them, they're yours forever. They're in your MOG collection. You can MOG them like you would any other shirt. And of course, we live in this world of the modern transmog rules. Before, it used to be like, well, I have to find like a chest piece I can put on that like shows off some of this shirt now, or like I have to have like a MOG set that I wear in the city because I don't actually have a chest piece on if I want to show off my look. I don't have to worry about that anymore, which is awesome. Like this holiday is actually, well, the stuff that you get from this holiday is so much better than it was when they implemented it, because they've relaxed all the transmog rules. So you can just walk around with your chest armor hidden and showing off whatever t-shirt you have on. So,
right. Yeah.
If you haven't done it before, like, this is a great opportunity to get a ton of unique MOG. And there's some pretty cool options here too. There's some pretty funny ones. It might be good for when Trial of Style comes all the way back around in March.
Yeah. 2 more shout outs I'd put in here. One is for Guild Crewneck, who is another vendor that's over in Stormheim, and then they have the Cloth Ripper, who is in Grizzly Hills. So yeah,
like, whoever got to name the NPCs for this holiday just had the best time.
They tried to think of the best ones they could, for sure. All right, for sure, should I say. Mop Remix, it won't be long until this is all wrapping up. August 19th is sort of the last possible day you can do it. So basically what they say is, WoW Remix is available to play through August 19th and will shut down on August 20th at 7 a.m. Pacific time. So at 10 a.m. Eastern, that's when it goes away. And here's the information that we've all been waiting for. Here's what happens to your character when it converts over to the live game character. All currencies, items, except gold, and quests will be removed from the Time Runner and their bank during the conversion process, so make sure to spend your bronze. So for those of you who are hanging on to bronze, hoping that it would be some sort of gold conversion, it doesn't sound like that's happening. The character conversion process may take several minutes to complete after you log in on your character. You will need to log into each Time Runner for the conversion process to take place. The character will retain their level. They'll receive 467 eye level gear for level 70 characters, appropriate to their current specialization. Lower level characters will receive lower item level gear, appropriate to their level. Characters will receive 4 30-slot bags with 1 26-slot reagent bag. They will unlearned collection items like ensembles will be sent to the character's mailbox. So if you happen to have those inside of your bank and you haven't used them, that's where they're going to go. Characters will be relocated to either Orgrimmar for Horde characters or Stormwind for Alliance. And characters will retain any gold they earned in Mists of Pandaria and receive a Time Runner's parting pack with a small amount of gold with scales with the character level to get them started in War Within. So I'm good with all of this except one big thing, Jason. Can you guess what it is?
No.
It's the gear item level. It's the gear item level coming in at 467.
You think it's too low?
I think it's too low. I think that your character has gone from feeling like it's at 600 item level inside of Mists of Pandaria to suddenly having the culture shock of a bring back down to 467. And I think that is too low. I think they should be putting people around the 500 item level mark is what I think they should be doing for these characters, so that these characters are going into War Within feeling like they are at least a little bit powerful. Not like, hey, the gear I just happened to find off of a mob I killed inside of Dragonflight right now is better than this. That I think is too bad.
I think 467 is okay. I think it's okay. I think it's fine. It's like fine for, for current power level going into War Within. You'll probably be replacing stuff pretty fast and furious to start doing those quests, but it shouldn't be like a big hurdle to climb. I think it's good to, in my opinion, it's sort of good to have it be a bit of a downgrade from like where you would get the event gear, the 480s and stuff you can get. I mean, granted, if you've been doing Radiant Echoes, you can always move that currency over to a Time Runner once they get dumped out into the main realms, and you can buy stuff. Or if you've been collecting Warbank stuff, the Warbound token. I keep want to call them tokens, but they're pieces of gear. If you've been collecting those, you can slap them right on there. I think it somewhat preserves people's investment in Radiant Echoes, and it makes Radiant Echoes like worth it to have used it to gear a character up. If you spit these out at like 480, it's like, why did I? There could be an argument in some regard, like, why did I even bother playing this to level this character up or whatever? So I think it's okay. And considering the way that they've redone quest reward gear, I think you're going to power up from quests a lot faster if you're not in that like top end gear than we have in previous expansions. So I think it's okay. I'm glad that they put this post out decently early, more than a full week in advance from when it's actually getting shut all the way off, right? It's going to be basically NA maintenance. It's going away next week. I'm glad that they said that your bronze is not going to convert into anything. Like there's no reason to hoard bronze because there's going to be some minuscule gold conversion. Like, if there's something you haven't bought with bronze, buy it this week. Yeah. Just to get out in front of stuff and just, answer a bunch of questions. 4 30-slot bags and a 26-slot reagent bag is pretty nice. That's a nice little benefit. That's plenty of storage space coming into the mainstream timeline. And there's a little bit of gold to get started with and everything. You get some gold playing Remix, but not very much at all. And then you're a level 70 character, and stuff could be expensive, gear repairs and all that stuff. It kind of adds up if you don't have any kind of seed money, and moving it from another character may not be a thing you want to do. So I like that. I'm glad that they got some communication about this. it's early enough. It could have been honestly a little bit earlier. Even I'm sure they knew what they were going to do with this before earlier today. I mean, this just came out right before we started recording.
Right.
The one thing I got to say that I think is kind of weird, they never did any kind of final push for Remix, you know, like
well, they did some adjustments like a month ago, but
yeah, like they did some tuning adjustments after pre-patch came out and everything kind of shifted, but they didn't do any kind of like double bronze weekend or like, you know, we saw those big the really big tuning changes came in like early June.
Yeah.
And they were awesome. They were great. And that was part of the reason why a lot of people like me were able to just finish the event entirely and go, there's nothing else I even want to do here. But I think we're all kind of expecting that final surge type of thing where it's like, okay, we're doubling bronze again. We're doubling threads, whatever. Go get whatever you want, you know, in terms of currency, in terms of power, in terms of vendor stuff, go do it. I mean, yeah, they retuned the raid bosses and everything. That was great. But, and I mean, we kind of talked about this, I think, on the show a few months ago where I was talking to people who were just like, I'll just wait until they buff it again. And, you know, the kind of dangerous game you play with that, because you only have so many resets, you know, so many daily resets, so many weekly resets, whatever, so much like actual time on Earth that you can participate in this. And if you're holding out waiting for Blizzard to, you know, just juice the bronze yield that much more, that day may never come, and then you might not have enough time. So,
well, Blizzard did put out a post, I think 2 months ago, saying that they had no plans to do some sort of final push. Like they put out a post stating, hey, we're not going to do this. I think there was still a lot of hesitation about like, they'll do something, because since then they like nerfed the bosses and did other things like that. But you're right that they didn't end up having like a double bronze weekend or some sort of explosive excitement thing that happened with it. And I feel like they would have benefited from it. I feel like there's no harm in doing hey, the final week is double bronze, get in there and get the last few things you need kind of idea. Like, I don't think there's a harm in doing that. It doesn't punish the people who put the time in earlier, because they would have earned substantially more bronze over the time they put in earlier than what someone could earn in a week. But, you know, it would, I think, motivate people to hop back in just before expansion launch to be able to check out some Pandaria stuff before it went away entirely. So
we get like that stretch goal thing, like this is just too. I'm never gonna get this much bronze, right? But if they double it one last time, then like okay, maybe that, you know, it could be cool for some people. I personally, I'm glad that I got everything I got out of the event, and that I got done well before the finish line. And like, I wouldn't be upset if they buffed all that stuff last minute to just help people grab whatever stuff they wanted on the way out. But I'm surprised they didn't end up doing it, I guess, is really my point. I figured it was kind of a given that like, all right, they say they have no plans to change anything right now, but you know, when you get down to the wire, they want to kind of, you know, entice people to come check it out or pay off that kind of time investment. So in this case, doesn't look like that's going to be happening. But also, like, if you're like me and you kind of buttoned up Remix a few weeks ago, then you don't even really have to think about anything.
It's not on your radar,
Yeah, you don't have to like go clean out your character's inventory or do something with gold or whatever. Like, it'll be there, you know, next week after maintenance, and then you can go play.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, hot fixes. All of us Mythic Raiders can rejoice. They finally fixed the ads that spawn on Queen Ashara inside Eternal Palace from expansions ago. They addressed an issue that prevented Athanel and Cyranus from properly spawning during the encounter. That's resolved. So for those of you who are farming Queen Ashara for transmog, you can rejoice that your fight won't bug anymore. At the time, that was really irritating.
It's good.
I'm glad it's fixed now. That's good. We have a few fixes like that happening, actually. Radio Echoes event, the Memories of Kalimdor, Eastern Kingdom, and Northrend will now stack up to 100 and will no longer drop once you have acquired its related essence or have fully created the Band of Radiant Echoes. So that is a new change to that for folks.
This is nice because these would drop from like everything. And you only need 20 of each, and then you make the Band of Radiant Echoes, right?
Yep.
So like why they made them drop past 20 in the first place, and then why make them stack to 100? None of that I really understand, but there might be some tech reason why it was convenient to do it that way.
Yeah.
And it was weird, like when you would get some, but you couldn't pick them up because you had like, let's say you had 17 and then 5 of them dropped, but they wouldn't go to your character because you put you over the cap, so go to your mailbox.
Yeah.
When you can't take them out of the mailbox, you get to delete some to get exactly to 20.
Yep.
Like, I guess that's probably why, because you might not get, exactly 20 as you go through. But continuing to have these drop after you made the heirloom was really obnoxious. It's like, I can't do anything with this ever again. Like, please stop giving me these. But
or make them worth lots of gold. One of the two. If I could sell them,
I didn't
then that's fine too.
I didn't consider that option.
That's
but they
option.
didn't do that. So at least, these are not going to be filling up your bags in your mailbox anymore, which is great. I mean, I think it's like, I don't know if you're ever going to use the Band of Radiant Echoes. Heirlooms are in a really weird spot right now, but you're probably never going to be able to get this again. And it doesn't take a lot to get it. So if you haven't done that so far, I would definitely put that on your list for this week. All you got to do basically is just do stuff for Radiant Echoes in each of the 3 zones. Get 20 each of these memories of each of the 3 zones. Combine it with the 25 currency ring you can buy from the vendor, and then you have your new heirloom forever and ever. And if they make heirlooms good again someday, you'll be glad you did it.
Yep, and there's been multiple rings over the years, so this way you'll have 2 rings that you can equip, which is really nice to do with heirlooms. The Dalaran Defender armor pieces with champion track should now be eligible for conversion with the Revival Catalyst. So people who want to actually get some more tier gear going as they head into the next content can do that. They reduced the hit point scaling on all event bosses so that they should now be killable in a more reasonable time frame. So that's always a fun one to see.
Amazing.
These mini bosses include Hogger and Thorum, and the final bosses with Onyxia and Ragnaros. I always love reading these notes because, again, the way they frame them means that you don't know if they made their health higher so they don't die as fast so more people can tag them, or if they made them lower so that they die easier. I know in this case they made them lower, but it's just one of those cases of we've seen times before with like elites where they're like, oh yeah, this elite was dying in 4 seconds. So we've increased its health and health scaling so that people can actually get there in time to kill it. So I would always find the wording on patch notes to be very interesting from Blizzard. They're just not clear of going, we increased. You're like, okay, cool.
I mean, more reasonable is really loaded, right?
Yeah.
That could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But there was kind of a funny ebb and flow with this past week, because at one point they increased the scaling of the Radiant Echo mini bosses specifically, right? And they had already increased the scaling on the event bosses before they made the timing changes to the event. So that put it in a really weird spot where sometimes it would take forever to kill that end boss, and then, which was good in a way because there was nothing else going to happen for the next 90 minutes. But then they changed it, right? And so they changed the flow of the whole thing, and now the boss's health is buffed, and now the mini boss's health is buffed. And so now everything takes forever because the boss doesn't die fast enough, the mini bosses don't die fast enough, which doesn't keep the event churning and moving into the next phase over and over again. So there was a couple days there where this felt really weird. Like suddenly everything kind of ground to a halt because you weren't depleting the bar fast enough to spawn the boss, because it took forever to kill Thorum, right?
Yeah.
And then the boss would take forever to kill. That was a drag. And I don't know if did I say it on the show last week? I may have, because I had played a little bit after the changes came in. But it needed to be reverted because it actually was very detrimental to the overall flow of this. And it sucks when you miss a tag on a boss and then you don't get credit for it and then you gotta wait. But now you're only waiting maybe 15 minutes for it to respawn, and then there's other stuff for you to go do, which also dies quickly again. So I think the HP scaling, to me, it feels like it's in a good place now. The event moves, man. You're just going from point A to point B to point C until it's boss time. Repeat the process, get your XP, get your gear, get your currency. So really good change there. That laundry list of tunes I leveled to 70 this past week, this HP reduction change is pretty specifically why I had time to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, tomorrow we are getting a tuning patch. It is launching out. Basically, every single class and spec is getting touched. We'll obviously highlight the Druid and Warrior ones that we care about just to make sure people are aware, but I would encourage everyone to go out, check the class notes, because there's large tuning passes to everything that's out there. So Balanced Druids, for example, they are going to get a 6% static spell damage buff. So they're just right off the bat, all their damage is increased by 6% as far as what happens with that and the damage they deal. They're also making Wrath and Starfire cast with Umbral Embrace now be affected by the passive bonuses from Mastery, which is also really nice. And the Wrath casts by Convoke are now also triggering the Umbral Embrace as well as Astral Smolder. So that's just a lot more damage stacked on to those cast abilities, as opposed to casting a vanilla generic one. You can now cast it with the actual buffs from the talents you have through that. Resto Druids are just getting like a straight across big healing buff. The lowest buff increase they have is 15% on Tranquility, Rejuve, and Wild Growth. Those are 3 massive heals for a Resto Druid, and they're to be increased by 15%. Outside of that, Cenarian Ward's getting 20%. Embrace of the Dream is getting 50% increased. Life Bloom heal over time by 5%, and the Bloom by 30%. Rejuve's mana cost is getting reduced by 0.1% mana, so it's a little bit cheaper for folks there. And Nourish is getting a 100% healing increase. They're doubling the healing that Nourish does to make it more viable for folks. And we also know for those Resto Druids out there, Convoke the Spirits is now going to cast 4 additional spells over its duration, specifically for Resto Druids. So yeah, that is some large increases. They've also gone through and buffed up damage for a lot of the cat weaving. So you're someone who's wanting to do cat weaving, a lot of your damage spells like Rip, Rake, Shred, Ferocious Bite, 15% increase across the board, not affecting PvP, just clarifying that for all these. But then Sunfire damage also increased by 15%. So the AoE, depending on if you spec into it or not, also affecting that in a big way. So good to see all these buffs coming in. But yeah, if that's any example of what's happening to other classes, you're going to feel this tuning pass tomorrow. It is going to feel good for the majority of classes out there. And Warrior does not seem to look any different from that, Jason.
No, the Warrior changes coming in are pretty nice, really. A lot of damage buffs. And, I think Prot Warrior is always sort of maybe a little bit middle of the pack or worse when it comes to tank damage. And I mean, as we got into a couple weeks ago, like I don't want my job to be doing damage, but I do play in Prot spec like exclusively, including when I'm outdoors and stuff. So I want that to feel good. Getting some Shield Slam damage baseline across the entire class is cool. And, we are seeing the self-healing tuning coming in. Like that is going live with this patch that we talked about recently. So, Pain and Gain, which heals you for your max health based off of rage throughput, that's getting chunked down, and some other things are changing too. Impending Victory nerf is apparently coming in, even though that was reverted on beta at one point. They've been kind of messing around with how much it's actually going to heal you, But just massive damage buffs to first of all, they just took the knob and turned it up 30% for melee attack and all ability damage, just across the board. Everything you do does 30% more damage. And then, Shield Slam's getting that class level buff, revenge damage going up, execute damage getting increased by 50%. Like they really want warriors to feel good about Prot warriors to feel good about pressing execute, which is cool because it costs a fair bit of rage, right? And your rage is not really supposed to be for that. But if you're like off tanking or whatever, it's great to weave it in there and throw some executes.
The biggest thing I want to pop in there real quick, the biggest thing I notice about this sort of damage increases is like we are heading into leveling characters. And like you said, you like to play Prot in the outdoor world. This is one of those things where they could easily go, hey, guess what? For the leveling experience, everyone's doing a whole bunch more damage. Once we start seeing what stuff's like in 2-3 weeks from now, we could do another tuning pass and bring stuff back a bit if we needed to.
True. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be, I would like, this is a massive damage buff to Prot Warrior. And if it gets rolled back a bit, I'm not going to be super devastated about it or whatever. And that is not a Devastator joke. Sorry, pardon the unintentional pun. There are some nerfs in here too, and it beyond just a self-healing thing, but it's stuff that we knew was coming. The defensive stance, baseline damage reduction being reduced. But then the fight through the flames talent slightly being buffed, so you take slightly less magic damage with fight through the flames active in defensive stance. That's I think it's a good trade-off. Warrior should be managing, physical damage taken through their various abilities. Magic damage is always a bit trickier, so toggle in defensive stance. That presents more of a gameplay option there, right? the damage reduction from Punish, which is when you shield slam a target, it puts like a stacking damage reduction on them. That's getting nerfed. We knew that was none of this stuff is a surprise from following, beta development, but it is, it's coming in this week. So just taking all that defensive and self-healing stuff down just a bit of a notch, and hopefully it'll feel good and create that kind of texture that we want to see in combat, where like Prot Warrior, you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You can't just dump all your rage into Revenge and Execute because they do more damage now. You have to use your rage to keep shield block up. You have to use Ignore Pain. You have to use all these tools in your kit to survive this damage and to make yourself healable for your healers to keep you alive. And I think none of this stuff, to me, looking at the kind of mixed bag here of like damage buffs and damage taken nerfs, it still seems like a win. I think, getting this much extra damage, especially in this phase of the expansion we're moving into, we're getting way more damage than I feel like we're getting hurt by the damage reduction nerfs, right? So it'll probably feel really good in this little window here where we're still playing Dragonflight. Like if you go do Dragonflight raids and dungeons with all this extra damage, you don't care about the damage reduction because you're not taking any damage anyway if you're geared out. So
yeah.
That might be fun if I actually end up doing anything.
Cool. As far as other hotfixes go, the Crossrealm Guild Bank function should now be available. It should be working after tomorrow when this patch goes live. So hopefully that is up and running the way they say it's supposed to be. And another harken back to old content, High Inquisitor Whitemane and Scarlet Monastery of old now correctly drops loot. Apparently they just had, how we used to talk about world bosses being the last one to get to the loot table and sort of being stuck with whatever's left over. Apparently there was just nothing left for Whitemane. They just
it just didn't show up that day for the loot distribution.
That's
I wonder when this actually broke. Like, did this break because of remix? Like, I definitely ran into weird issues with that fight. Although it says Scarlet Monastery of old, so that I guess it doesn't mean the remix version of it.
No, I was wondering if like something happened or it was noticed or something between Season of Discovery. Like whether in Season of Discovery they were like, oh, hey, this boss isn't dropping loot, so they fixed it, but then they didn't fix it in the live game. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much that data crosses over or whatever. Yeah. And like, because you can actually go back and access the pre-MOP Scarlet Monastery in the live game now. So I guess it must have been specifically that because of the way that this note is written. And I don't remember when that came back in. It came back in over the course of Dragonflight, right? Or is it older than that? I can't quite remember. So
no, I don't remember either.
I don't know how long it's been broken for, but if you've been farming Scarlet Monastery of old for Whitemane loot and tearing your hair out because it's not happening, it should be happening not now, but after maintenance this week.
Exactly. The role icons for the group finder have been replaced with new art for improved readability, so keep that in mind. And there's apparently, this is something I'm really curious about, they changed the font colors on the quest background you're using for dark mode, so it should use all white font now. So apparently there is a dark mode for the quest thing built into the game, which I was not aware of and might just be going live now. And that dark mode has the white font now. So I really want to see what this looks like. I have not seen this before. If someone else has been using this for like months and I didn't know it existed, then let us know.
I didn't know either. So I don't know when dark mode came in for the Quest UI. The Quest UI did just get a ton of new features a couple weeks ago, and I've been a little busy with other stuff, so I haven't really been poking around in there. So maybe it was new with the previous patch, or maybe I don't know. But
maybe it was dark mode, but the font color stayed black, so you just couldn't read anything. You just turned your Quest thing it was just dark.
You might as well just Alt-Z it at that point and just not even have the UI. But I'll have to like dig into this after maintenance and actually see what it looks like. I don't know. I use dark mode a lot on various apps that I use on desktop and on mobile, but I don't know if I want dark mode for quests and WoW. I guess I'll have to see what that looks like.
Yeah. There was a YouTube video that came out this week for War Within called Threads of Destiny. The little blurb they have for it is, as the might of the Nerubian kingdom of Ashkahet falters, their queen must decide on the choices she's willing to make to ensure her people's survival. And this is another one of those animated comic book, graphic novel style type of videos that you can check out and enjoy. I'm not going to spoil any stuff in it, but it's cool, worth checking out. And these are always nice lead-ins to the expansion, so it's always good to see them.
Yeah, I think this is a great one. The only problem here is we don't have credits, so we don't know.
Yeah.
They weren't published with the post, so we don't know who directed it or
Yeah.
anything like that officially at this moment in time. So it'd be cool if they would include those at some point. But I thought this one was great actually. Like I kind of run hot and cold with these. I think like the ones for Dragonflight really were okay, but they didn't really stick with me. You know, I thought like the BFA ones were incredible. The Legion ones were really good, and the Shadowlands ones are actually pretty good too, which was weird because of Shadowlands. But this one I think really does a great job of getting us ready for season 1, right? And because one of the main characters here is Queen Ansarek, who is going to be our initial end boss of the first raid, and so really establishing sort of who she is and who her people are and where they're sort of existing as we enter the story with them, and also setting up Xal'atath a bit more, bringing her in, doing something that's maybe a little bit less mysterious. Like Xal'atath Cut's a really interesting figure, and she's a super cool bad guy so far, but the tangible stuff hasn't been there as much, I feel like. And in this piece, like you really see her start to like, lay out the game board, so to speak, right? Start putting some pieces together. And so I like that element of it, of sort of simultaneously building up Ansarek and Xal'atath as these, different threats that are going to be impacting what the players are doing. I really like that. It's like 5 minutes long, but it gives you so much to go on in terms of like, why do we care about this? Or like, why are these like baddies that we're going to go fight in the next few months and several years respectively? And also just some of the illustrations in this piece are incredible, just really gorgeous to look at. So yeah, this was good. I assume we're going to get some more of these because they're usually a series, but nothing else is announced in terms of, at this moment as we're recording. So I don't know, maybe we'll get one tomorrow or something. I think this one came out last Tuesday, right? So maybe these are Tuesday releases until expansion. But I think one thing that we learned in recent years with this game is it's really important to set up your bad guys, your baddies. Like you gotta have an investment in them in some way, right? You have to understand what makes them tick, and you have to understand what makes them a threat. And that was easy with Arthas, right? That was all that heavy lifting was done years before from other game stories and stuff. It was easy with Illidan. It was even easy with Deathwing. Garrosh is a character that they built up over the course of several expansions to kind of become that super baddie that you understood like why we wanted to fight him, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of take that thread all the way through to where you end up with Jailer, where it's like, even the most like generous accounting I could give you of it is like, well, his motivations are very esoteric, right? His methods are esoteric. Like, it's very mysterious. If you read a lot of the supporting information, then the Jailer makes sense as a bad guy. And that's like the most generous way I could really describe it.
Yeah.
It's like at the very best, like if you read the Sylvanas novel and you read Chronicle Volume 4 and you read like every scrap of text you could find inside of Shadowlands, then like maybe the Jailer is sort of a compelling villain in some ways, but most players are not going to do all of that. First of all,
yeah, the average player would look at the Jailer and go, "Oh, he was one of those like hierarch people who was kicked out by everyone else, and he's bitter about it, and so he's angry and going to destroy the universe." That would be the average player who paid attention at all kind of perspective.
And I think it's a fair assessment because that's what the game presented us, right? And like. Just not as compelling as some other, box art, key art type of villains that we've had in the past. And also his arc was relatively short, right? He's sort of one and done inside of one expansion. We know that Xal'atath, I got a feeling that Xal'atath is going to be around beyond the War Within. And, Ansarek herself, who knows? That might be a situation where we defeat her and then that's the end of her story in season 1. Fine. She's the raid boss for this raid, and not every character needs to have this huge legacy and impact on the overall story. But through this piece, like we very clearly understand her motivations as a villain, and we understand the threat that Xal'atath sort of empowering her people poses to our character's way of life. And so that's why I think it's cool. Like it lays the whole thing out. It gets me definitely ready and interested to see like where this all goes as we play through season 1 story, play through this raid, and see what's going on and with this like sect of Nerubians that we've never seen before. You know, they've been sort of isolated for so long from the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, collecting appearances in The War Within. This is from Kaivax saying, following the introduction of warbands, we've seen a lot of discussion and received a lot of feedback from transmog collectors. We want everyone to know that we're currently working on some improvements to appearance collecting that are planned for the next patch release after the War Within release. So just remember that. It'll be the next patch that comes in after War Within is released. First is an update to class restricted gear. We're working to make it so that non-cosmetic class-restricted gear can have its appearance collected by any class. Appearance collections will be retroactive to any gear in your inventory or bank. The intent is to make it much easier to collect class sets from legacy raids where the gear drops directly. In other words, if you are someone who goes back and clears out the Eye, trying to get your Alar mount, and you get a bunch of really cool mage tier, because it was a great mage tier back then, but you're playing a warrior, that gear, as long as it's inside your inventory or bank, will become collected and part of your collection through your warrior having it once this patch content goes live. So yes, this means that there may be collectors out there who just start banking hordes and hordes of items for the next 3 months or 2 months. We will have to wait and see. But hopefully this patch comes sooner rather than later, and we get that up and running for folks earlier, because yeah, that's great. I think it's a great change. I'm definitely looking forward to that happening. They're also still working on the much discussed update that makes it so that when quests are completed, all appearances from non-cosmetic item rewards will be granted. Regardless of whether that particular class could have seen or chosen them, we plan for this to be retroactive, so any quest that you have previously completed should grant all qualifying appearances when you first log onto any character. The intent here is to remove the need for completing these quests on multiple classes in order to collect all the appearances they provide. Again, our intent is to implement the above with the next patch after the launch of War Within. Thank you very much. Yeah, man, great changes to Transmog Collection out there. Lots of people should be thrilled about this. This is very good news.
Yeah, this is great stuff. It's a bummer that it wasn't ready for pre-patch, and it's not going to be ready for expansion launch. But this is kind of where this whole system needs to go in a warbands universe, right? The class restricted gear thing is of particular interest to me because one of my little side projects of late is filling in transmog sets from way back when. I have all the warrior transmog sets for each tier, at least one variety of it, depending on if they had difficulty recolors or whatever. But I have, every warrior set, I have some version of it completed. But that's about it. I don't think there's some other class sets I have here and there, but I'm missing a lot of stuff. And the way the tier 1 and 2 stuff, like from Molten Core and Blackwing Lair, works, the items just drop. They're not tokens, and they're not any other kind of item that then turns into the gear piece. Like Paladin shoulders just drop, and if you're playing a warrior, even though they're plate, you don't learn the appearance because it has a class restriction on it. So I'm really glad that's going away, because it's especially going to be huge for those early raids. Tier 1 and 2 will be huge for this. I don't know what they're going to end up doing with tokens, like if they're going to make those warbound or whatever just to get the Mog. That would be great. It will be a little bit of a bummer if we live in Warband's universe and you go do a raid for Mog and you get tokens that you just have to vendor. So we'll see how that actually plays out. But at least for the really old stuff, I'm trying to think, like there might be some other stuff scattered around in the newer raids that are class restricted. But if you have that stuff, like I did some of this. I did some Blackwing Lair the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, right. Like this is just priest gear or whatever, so I'm not going to learn this. But then I saw this post and I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave it in my bags because I'll keep it on this character and then I'll learn it once this patch goes through. Like I can spare a few bag spaces for a couple months on a character I don't play that much anyway, right? So that's a great change. The quest thing is, I mean, where we're going to get to is fantastic, and that's absolutely the way that it should work. Is like you do a quest that rewards warband armor. It's everything is warband, right? So it's a warband quest. You do the quest, it rewards your character a piece of armor that's appropriate for them, potentially of their choice, and then you unlock all of the appearances for all the armor classes. That's awesome. What's not awesome is that it just doesn't work yet, right? And they want it to work retroactively, so it's not like you need to keep quest rewards in your bags or you need to go redo all the quests after the patch. But what if it doesn't actually work, retroactively at that exact time when it goes live? Then there's going to be a weird holding pattern of like, do I go back and reacquire stuff? Do I wait for them to fix it? I don't know. And also, this was a thing that was like working on beta, and then there must have been some problem with it, so they pulled it. And then there was some official communication that went out that said like, oh no, yeah, actually like the way it's supposed to work is you don't get all the appearances, which obviously that response was wrong. Yeah. So they clarified in this post, which is fantastic, but it's a bit of a bummer. It didn't all line up to just be like, bam, here it is. Here's your warband. Go get all your stuff. Like that would have been really nice, but it's just not the realities of WoW production. My advice to you would be, if you do old stuff for Mog, don't vendor anything yet. If you don't learn it, if you don't get that little toast that says you learned it, then just hang on to it. Because if it's class restricted, you should learn it. I would say probably by about,
let's say 2 months from now, 3 months from now.
Yeah, like Halloween, give or take, right? Something like that. Like we should see a patch come in where you should learn it after you log in on the character or whatever.
Yeah.
So just be aware. I'm in a spot now where it's like, well, do I do Mog runs because I have these resets sitting here? Like I could do them and then hold on to the stuff. Do I do that, or do I just wait and just save myself the inventory management puzzle? And I don't have an answer on that yet. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, it might even be sooner than Halloween, because when they do the tuning pass after Mythic content comes out, or just before Mythic content comes out, that's the technically first patch after release that we normally see, and that's typically 2 weeks after season 1 kicks off, or a week after season 1 kicks off. So we could be like 4 weeks or 5 weeks out from seeing this. We'll have to see where it lands with this sort of thing.
And it occurs to me too that Gamescom is coming up, and I think Gamescom is the weekend between early access and expansion launch, so it's next weekend.
Right.
And if you remember, many years ago when Legion was like launching around the same time as Gamescom, they announced patch 7.1 like at Gamescom before Legion was even actually out, I think, which was so ridiculous at the time. Like we couldn't believe that had happened. But I wouldn't be shocked if at Gamescom we get some kind of info about like what the first patch is going to be, if it's the .5 or what have you, which will probably include these changes. Like we might be hearing about that like next week, so that would be cool.
Yeah. Delves is the next piece of feedback that Kaivex is addressing, saying, "Hi everyone, we've gotten some updates for you as we are nearing launch. Thank you for all the great feedback so far. The issue regarding not being able to leave a delve should be resolved with the latest beta build. We're also working on better messaging for when you are on a team regarding which teammates are eligible for delves. You should see some progress on that in the current beta build. On the content side of things, we've flagged objects that Bran should never attack, specifically Nerubian cocoons. No more Bran surprising you with a face full of webs. We've continued doing tuning to make sure certain things and certain classes don't feel like they're having a vastly different experience in delves. Most notably, we've reduced unavoidable damage for casters wearing cloth armor. On that note, we've introduced a new curio designed to help Bran feel more impactful for healers. It's called the Rage-Filled Idol, a combat curio. Players in the healing spec will find they have an easier time acquiring this. With this curio, Bran will do noticeably more damage in combat. However, he will take damage every few seconds while in combat. Our goal of this curio is to have healers engage more in healing Bran, while also increasing his damage output with a cost associated with it. healers should spend less time having to juggle between damage and healing themselves if they choose to equip this curio. We'll continue to work to improve the experience of delves, and we're hard at work determining what's the next feature after for season 1. So based on everyone's feedback, thank you so much, Kyvax. Well, that's excellent. I'm glad to see something being addressed for healers, because I like healing, and so often experiences like this are developed around me trying to do as much damage as a healer as possible, which just isn't enjoyable. So I'm glad that this will be hey, apply this, just keep HOTS rolling on Bran as a druid, and you'll be fine. Bran will do a lot of the damage and take a lot of the lead. That makes me happy. I think that's a good change.
Yeah, this is really cool, actually. And I mean, delves are a really important feature, right? They got to feel good to all different kinds of players, regardless of what spec you're playing or how many humans you're playing with. Like, delves really need to land, I think, for this expansion, because it is one of our big new features. They're supposed to be evergreen, right? This is supposed to be a thing we have forever now.
Yeah.
So I think the tuning is important. You want it to feel good. You want it to feel as good for a fire mage as for a guardian druid as for a holy priest, right? Like, obviously, they're going to be different approaches and different challenges with that, but that should be the goal, is that you could play it in any spec you want, and it should feel like an appropriate challenge, and it should feel rewarding. I do like the idea of having the option for heal specs to really just focus on healing, and like your job is to heal Bran while he, handles the damage dealing, especially as somebody who really has never healed in much of any capacity and doesn't really know how to do it. Like, what a low stress way to kind of get used to using your different tools in the healing spec. Follow an NPC around in a delve and keep them alive and do your stuff, use your buttons, and get some rewards at the other end of it. That sounds really cool. So I'm glad that that's coming in, and that there's a way to just like do delves in specifically healing focused. I mean, let's invoke Torghast for a second, right?
Yep.
Like, remember that whole debacle. Like, Torghast was a thing you had to do. You had to do it because you had to get your ashes to make your legendaries, and it was punishing, if not worse, for healer specs, because it wasn't really designed to be healed through entirely. Like, you have to kill stuff.
Yeah, you had to bring
have
a
an
friend.
NPC companion. Yeah, right. You couldn't really solo it in not in any way that felt good to actually do. So, I feel like this is a direct sort of through line from that. Like, listen, we learned our lesson for making this content inaccessible to healer specs in Shadowlands. So here's another crack at it with more of an option where, you could sit in a heal spec and you can actually do that job. You could fill that role of healing, and you can play through this PvE content solo in that regard. Like, that seems really smart to me. So hopefully the tuning is locked in and feeling good, because delves need to land. We don't. What I would love to do would be to move into a world where we have delves forever as just this element of solo or small group play, this sort of capstone of the outdoor world experience. And we're not reinventing the wheel every 2 years with a feature that may or may not work. I think delves have a lot of potential to just slot in there, and then that's a thing we do. It's on the content menu. It's a way to play the game forever. And then we iterate on making them cooler or different, or adding different tech to them, or telling different stories with them, and continue to add variety to the mode. But we're not hitting the drawing board every expansion with some feature for people to go explore. We have delves. We know what they are. We like them decently enough, and off we go on into the next thing. That's what I'm hoping for. And I feel like if they stumble out of the gate, they might push some kind of panic button and start doing something, radical, when really what they need to do is just dial in the tuning here and make them something players want to do or look forward to doing or feel rewarded for spending time in.
Yeah, but not feel like they have to spend time in them, right? That was the biggest flaw with Torghast, is it went from being something people really enjoyed doing to a chore really fast, when they were like, hey, this currency that you need to be able to progress your end game and feel like you're going to be a powerful character, get your legendaries, you need to run Torghast to do. Or in this case, it's like, hey, if you need to, in order to get your legendary, you have to run 150 delves. They'll be like, that's okay, you've just killed delves for people. Right. Like, let's be clear.
You can't
right?
tie it to an external system like that. And that was one of the other big Torghast sins.
Yeah. So you gotta be careful with that stuff. All right, Mythic Plus updates. We have an update for a new bargain, Oblivion, where the crystals of Oblivion now move towards the previously targeted location if all players are out of combat. These are updates to current ones. Oblivion exists, Devour exists. So if all players drop out of combat, in other words, if your tank runs ahead and stays in combat, the crystals don't move. They're going to chill where they are. But if everyone drops out of combat, these crystals start moving towards their previously targeted location. So players will have to be on the lookout for the crystals. Second change, Devour. Devour now no longer prevents players from receiving healing. Thank you. Now it inflicts 1% damage, down from 2% damage of the player's maximum health every 1 second. Great. These are good changes. I hate it when someone becomes immune to receiving healing. It feels incredibly punitive inside of any Mythic Plus scenario to be like, ooh, lining up a big great heal, bam, lands for nothing. Well, that's terrible. Why? Well, because they're immune to healing. You can't heal them right now. And you're like, well, I just wasted a whole thing that I was doing because I didn't notice this one little debuff that happened on this one person that made them immune to healing. I'd much rather see someone's health get a dot like this where every 1 second it's ticking down and you have to manage that as a healer, as you do regularly through the dungeon, is managing people's damage as an affix in here. So I think that's a good change. I like the counterplay of Oblivion of like keeping someone combat locked is kind of an interesting query, whether or not people are like, I'm going to hit this critter inside of the dungeon to stay in combat so that the crystals don't move. I think will be kind of a neat thing to sort of see play out and see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, these affixes, I feel like we're going to probably see a lot of changes to them once they go live because, most of us are not really spending a lot of time testing them. They stood these up like pretty close to the end of the process. But, the stuff we're doing with them sounds pretty smart. I don't know, like, if the Oblivion crystals, like if you're out of combat, so if you're not fighting anything, do they move to the previously targeted location? Then do they not like do anything because there's no enemies to intercept them? So I don't know. But then you want to get them to get the buff. So can you kind of extend that combat and move them, towards where you want to get the buff? There could be some decisions there. And the Devour changes sound really good. Devour it's an affix that I think everybody sort of had an initial reaction to that was like, what, we're right back to Afflicted, but really I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as Afflicted in terms of overall disruption. But yeah, making it so that you can still receive healing during it I think it's huge, because you don't want to have deaths to something like that, something you really can't control, right? Like even participating in combat and using whatever your self-healing or leech or whatever is and getting external heals, and that doesn't save you because you were low health and then Devour kicked in and then you couldn't receive healing, like that feels terrible. So I like that. I like the change a lot. And tuning, cut it in half, like that sounds good to me. That sounds like a good place to start from. So I have a feeling that, and we also saw a laundry list of dungeon tuning that we're not really going to get into because we haven't played the dungeons, so we can't really discuss any thoughts about the changes that they're making. But they are dialing in the tuning for the start of season 1 and including shortening up a lot of timers and stuff. Mythic Plus tuning, especially early in expansion, is always a bit of a wild ride. So I'm not expecting to step in there week 1 and just start crushing my way to Keystone Hero.
Right.
Like this is probably going to take a while for somebody at my level for them to get the tuning in, for me to get enough gear and what have you. But the cool thing to see, I guess, is like how much they've flexed on this stuff throughout this process this summer. I mean, they've made so many changes to the Mythic Plus system overall, and they've been tweaking these new affixes that they're coming in with quite a bit. So, I believe that they're going to get it right. And my mantra's kind of been like, it's not a question of, are they going to get it right? It's a question of how long is it going to take for it to feel like it's right, And I think Mythic Plus is maybe one of the systems where we're going to feel that the most because, the tuning is the most challenging. It's some of the hardest content to do, and it's a small group, so you don't have a lot of coverage from. You're not going to have every class or spec in a dungeon group, so that that kind of ends up favoring outliers or disfavoring them if they're outlying in the wrong direction. So, I'm just buckling up, I guess, is the short version of what I'm trying to say. Is like, I think a lot of what they're doing seems smart. It seems like they're making some cool changes to the system, but we're not really going to know until we're all doing this together at the same time once season 1 starts on September 10th.
Yeah, exactly. All right, last but not least, another blast from the past post here from Kyvax, who says, we looked into players who just received the Warlord's Death Wheel mount, and the reason was something like a bug or crash that was invoked the instant that the mount was initially supposed to be rewarded, and then a fix that for that resulted in a recent update. There may be some other achievements that a very small number of players have also been missing that now they received. Yeah, if you're someone who was supposed to get this mount ages ago and never really noticed it, and then you're like, hey, wait a minute, I logged in, I got the mount, what happened? Yeah, apparently they just fixed that recently in like a little patch thing that, I don't know, must have been tied to something else. I don't know. I don't think they went back looking for this. I think they probably just fixed something else and it resulted in fixing this. That's my guess.
Yeah, it had to be something to do with just the overall, underlying logic with war bands and the way stuff was moving account wide and whatever. I mean, the Warlord's Death Wheel, this is we're talking about the mount from Azeroth Choppers, right? So that was what, during the second year of MOP, I think. So we're talking.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
it was like 2011.
No, it was a little bit later than that, but not much. I think this was the lead up to Warlords, or there was like the gap between Mists and Warlords, right? So we're talking about 2013, 2014. This is like 10 years ago.
2014,
at least, right?
Yeah, it was 2014. There you go. Yep.
Yeah. So this is ancient history, and basically the deal was they had this web series. If you don't remember Azeroth Choppers, they had a web series where two teams of Blizzard devs worked with this bike customization shop to make like an Alliance motorcycle and a Horde motorcycle, and there's like a community vote on which one was better, and then whichever one was the victor, players were going to get an in-game version of it. And the Horde one was victorious, and then we all got them a little bit later on via, it was just like if you log in, you get it or whatever. And yeah, that was that. And then you could buy the Alliance one for some absurd sum of gold if you wanted it. And I kind of forgot about this for the most part over the years. And yeah, apparently some people just never ended up being awarded the mount until this past week or so. So it's just pretty funny. That's like one of those wacky WoW stories that only sort of happens in a game that's this old with this much data and this many different, things that have happened in it over the years. It's like, yeah, I finally get that mount I didn't get 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Yeah, man, oh man. Yeah. All right, folks, with that, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Alianas, Arajian, James, Kapawi, Max, Pinky, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for all that you do, as well as all of our patrons, past and present. Thank you so much for everything that you give to support the show. If you're someone who wants to support the show and hop in and keep us on the air, you can head on over to patreon.com/thestartingzone, and you can hop in there and support the show and become a patron, whatever sort of tier you want to give. That's always appreciated. And folks who are, a little bit farther up there get different Discord name colors and access to a different Discord channel. And there's lots of conversation that happens over there. So feel free to hop in and support if that's something you're up for. But thank you, patrons, past and present, for keeping us going and keeping everything live and on the air.
Absolutely, patrons. Thank you so much. We appreciate all your support. And, the Patreon's been going on for about 7 years now. So it's a long time to be supporting the show. And we really appreciate it. It does help us keep the show on schedule, helps keep the archives online and everything like that. So we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for chipping in and supporting what we do around here.
No, we appreciate it. Hey, folks, if you've enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, another great way to support the show is heading on over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and leaving us those 5-star reviews. They help bump us up those charts. I think we were top 5 in the U.S. for video game podcasts last week.
Top 10. I saw top 10.
I think we were like number 4 on the list or something. It was crazy. We were 9 on the list at one point.
It was 9, I think. Yeah. I mean, that was the first time we cracked top 10. I don't know about ever, but definitely in a really long time. So thank you so much for the downloads. And also, I mean, geez, that just kind of gives you an idea of how hot and how strong the sentiment is around World of Warcraft right now, right? Like people are really interested in this game and where it's going. So it's always fun to be in that spot where we're ramping up into something big.
Yeah. So here's one that comes in from The Greatest Nate, entitled Great Listen. Says, as a player returning from last playing in Cataclysm, I really enjoyed the show and appreciate it. It helps me get up to speed on goings on without having to be reading Wowhead or Reddit all day. It was a great help in getting back up to speed the last few months and has me really excited for The War Within. Well, speaking of things that happened more than 10 years ago, Jason, thank you so much for returning after Cataclysm to support the show and hop in and hang out and chat with us. Man, oh man, Greatest Nate, I'm glad that we can help you out and support. Thank you for helping us out with support. And yeah, we're looking forward to War Within. It's going to be exciting. There's going to be a lot going on. It'll be fun.
Absolutely, yeah. Welcome back. I mean, geez, since Cataclysm is a really long time. The game is quite different than it was back then. I think mostly for the better. I would say almost entirely for the better from Cataclysm specifically. But yeah, I mean, that's the other thing that we see, more and more of late is people coming back from really long absences or new players, and it can be tough to navigate on the way back in. And I think, that's a thing that maybe WoW could improve upon is really directing that returning or new player experience. But it is part of the reason why. I mean, look at the discussion we had just earlier on this show about, well, this stuff is up this week, but do you really want to do it? Because it's not maybe the best use of your time, depending on what your goals are. And that's the kind of stuff that the game is not really going to present to you, and a lot of other media are maybe not the best place for that discussion to take place, right? So I feel like that's the thing we love to dig into around here about, like, how are you spending your time in the game and why, or like, what should you consider spending your time on? Because, I think that's a real decision point for people who are playing WoW or considering, maybe especially for somebody who used to play WoW and it's like, well, should I play it again? I don't know. It used to take so much time. I'm older now. I don't have that much time, or, I don't know how to use my time wisely in WoW. Like, I think it's that's a legitimate problem, like, for the game in general, and that players have to confront, for themselves. And so that's a spot where we really want to dig into how to do that, and how to get the most out of that time that you are spending.
Yeah. It's really important to be sure that you feel like the time that you're putting into the game is worth it for you and you're doing what's right for you. So absolutely. All right. That wraps up episode 644 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter @thestartingzone. Or, like I said, you can join our Discord server, thestartingzone.com/Discord. We'll put you at the button that you click to join our Discord server, and you can hop in there and chat with folks. And if you want to get your hands on some TSC gear, some shirts or mugs or stickers, things like that, you can go to TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone and check out all the stuff over there. Jason, if folks are trying to find you, where can they find you on the interwebs?
The best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. And you can also find me over on Blue Sky. The username is just JLucas over there. So come say hi at either of those spots. And you can also find the video channels over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. I did a little bit of streaming when I got back from vacation this past week, just doing some Radiant Echo stuff and just, trying to get the stream set up and running, and actually going back out to YouTube for the first time in a while. So it's up and running. WoW schedule will probably be light this week, so stream schedule also will be light as a result. But I mean, we're not that far away now. Another 10 days, we'll be doing all kinds of War Within stuff over there. So come check those out.
You're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter @Spencer_Downey or over on Twitch, twitch.tv/SpencerHD and youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.